And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our stream today. We are very excited to talk to you about the interesting life decisions we've made, some of us more recently than others. This panel, just to make sure you know you're in the right one, is called Shifting Careers, Joining the Gaming Industry from Other Walks of Life. So I'm now going to throw it over. When I say your name, please introduce yourself and what you're doing in this space. Starting with Danny.
Oh, good morning, everybody, or good time zone, everybody. Such American of me to assume just it's always my time. My name is Danny Quatch. You can find me all over the internet at Brutal Dan. My pronouns are he, him. And what do I do in our space right now? I am the community manager for Roll20. I'm also the community director for Free RPG Day. And I also dabble in a little bit of writing and designing and just loving on my friends who are doing cool things, because we are always all doing all the things. And on social media, I just like to scream super loud about it.
Amazing. Bianca.
Hi, hello, howdy. My name is Bianca Bigford, she, her pronouns. Right now I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Roll20. So Danny and I have the extreme pleasure of working together. And I'm also a freelance narrative designer and writer, specifically D&D 5e, although I'm trying to branch out a little bit into other systems, but been writing for a few years. And yeah, you can find me on any kind of social with my full name, Bianca Bigford.
Amazing. Thank you. Elise.
Hi, I'm Elise Resendez. I am Blickamore everywhere online. I use she, they pronouns, and I am half of Mythic Grove. I'm a freelance producer and writer and art director, and I have been enjoying making incredible things with a lot of incredible people.
Indrani.
Hello, my name is Indrani. My pronouns are she, they. You can find me on the internet as at Nonagon Dice. I'm a tabletop game designer and the co-founder of Desis Dragons, which is India's largest tabletop RPG community.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Purna. You can find me on Twitter as Purna Mazumdar. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a writer, editor, proofreader in the TTRPG space currently, but getting into doing more things, and hopefully you will know what it is soon. So I think it's a good segue at this point to just mention what I used to do before, and then we'll do sort of a reverse thing to say how we came upon the TTRPG space, or rather what we used to do before and then how we came upon it. So I used to, and still sometimes do, work in the field of international development, which means often a lot of impact evaluations, a lot of spreadsheets, which might explain some of my behavior. And just in general, I would do things that are development economics related. So I used to do that. And now that I have a foot in the door here, I am more and more tempted to do more of this. Let's go in first order. Indrani, where were you before, or which industry do you come from?
I come from the software industry. I did a lot of marketing and content writing and technical documentation for ERPs, and that is as boring as it sounds. So when I was like, wait, what? I can make money in tabletop and video games? Let me do that instead. That was my segue. I always knew I wanted to work in games, but I grew up on the outskirts of Mumbai in a town where not much happened at all. We got our first McDonald's in 2018, if that puts things into perspective. So the idea of working in games always was like, this is a pipe dream. So I started in software. That's how it went. I'm going to throw it to Bianca.
Yeah, so I come from the nonprofit industry. I've worked in nonprofits for 20 years. That I started off in IT, And I did, and that kind of, as social came up and more online things came up, because I am that old, I kind of shifted more into marketing. And so I specialized in digital marketing. And in nonprofit space, I was very much specialized in gender equity, and loved gaming, and started freelance writing because I wanted to kind of similar that, where I was, there's not a whole lot of, I think this might be a theme, not a whole lot of places to work if you want to work in person TTRPG space, or even the gaming space. And when I was younger and first starting in my career, I thought I had to be a programmer to be in game development. Like, I just thought that it was like a one-to-one. And so I followed my passion, which was nonprofits, and really specialized in the marketing from there.
Amazing.
Danny.
Yeah, I come from the health and wellness industry and public health. So that's my background. I have my bachelor's in public health and my master's in exercise science. So for the past 10 years before I came on to Roll20, I worked for a Fortune 10 company helping out with their benefits policies, and I worked on site to help the employees stay moving and healthy in a corporate setting. And much like everybody else, that was my passion, helping people in general, and making people feel heard and involved, and that they are kind of on the front lines with us. That's kind of like that's what drives me to do things. But gaming has always been a pipe dream, really. It's like I've done content creation. I kind of did some contracting stuff in the board gaming side of things, still tabletop, but I never thought it could be a full-time thing, especially when you're taught, like, you grow up, you go to college, you get a degree, and you get a job in that space. So, yeah, I took a leap of faith, going from something that was like sciency, public health, into gaming, and it's exciting because it was an opportunity and definitely a risk to take that leap between the two. So, Elise, what's your story?
I was a union tailor for the film and television industry in New York City for 10 years, and have run shops for Netflix and HBO and Amazon, and for now a producer and sort of almost showrunner for my own company in this space. Everything is adjacently applicable. It's just in a different font, right? So what I did in film and television industry was the same job I'm doing now, just, it's not Curly Sans MS anymore.
What I love about this is, as you were saying that, Elise, I was just thinking, for people who know us from our previous lives, or friends or people who are still a part of our lives, this must be like seeing the same actor in a different TV series, like.
When I learned that Danny did this, it was like, of course. Like when I met with Indrani, it was like, of course. Like it translates so perfectly. It's just in a slightly, you learn different words and you have a different context for what you do, but the core intent behind it is the same.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I have, in my wisdom, and speaking of spreadsheets, have some questions to ask all of you that will hopefully give people who want this information some context of how to do this, because we hopefully recently or are still figuring it out. Okay, so how did you come to the decision to do this professionally? So you enjoy playing games, having a great time, enjoy TTRPGs specifically, and then decide this is what I want to do and potentially make money. And are you all making money? But anyway, it doesn't matter. This is not relevant. How did you decide to do this? How did you do this? How did you decide to do this professionally? So this time we're going to start with Bianca.
Yeah, so I will be the first to say I got very lucky. And I think my circumstance is rare, but still something I would encourage folks to do. That I was freelancing, I still freelance, but I was freelancing a lot, and as a writer, and have been on many projects with folks. And one of the people that I got to work with is James Intercasso. And I have to say that because of James, it's why I'm at Roll20. So 2 years ago, he was working with Roll20, and he said, "Hey, I know you work, your day job is marketing, and a position just opened up at Roll20. I really think you should apply."
Wow.
And it was like, I was not looking for a new job. I wasn't even like anywhere in my like atmosphere, because I didn't think that being a marketer and being in nonprofits that I could be at a company like Roll20. And so I applied, and I made sure, and I hope we get more into advice. I'm sure we will. When I applied, kind of exactly what you're saying, Elise, that I kind of showed everything that I was doing in marketing, and even though it was for a nonprofit, all of it was applicable to Roll20. And so I just tried very hard in my interview to show that, and to show my love for TTRPGs. And I was very lucky and fortunate to get the position. So like I said, part of the advice that I would just give now is, always look out for other people when you hear about open positions. But a lot of it, and I know people think networking is like, cocktail parties and like really small talk and terrible, but it's really just getting to know folks in the industry, because we are a very small industry, and you never know when these opportunities might come up.
Very, very nice. So yes, exactly. I think something that everyone should keep in mind is that you do have transferable skills for this industry, even if you don't think you do. Just a virtual hug to you all, wondering whether you can do this. Okay, so Indrani, you look eager to join us. Please.
Sorry, no, when
take it
you
away.
said the transferable skill thing, I was like, yeah. When my progression into working in games professionally came from doing it non-professionally. I co-founded Desis Dragons with Shubham Mehta and Chirag Asnani, and it started very much as a way of like building community in India that is like very visibly queer and very visibly available to people so they could join in. And we knew from the get-go that we needed to, like, if we were going to have a community space, then we needed to like learn community management. I was like, wait, I picked up that skill, and not in a professional capacity. I picked it up by being the moderator of a bunch of different role-playing forums growing up.
Wow.
And I'd been doing it for a decade by the time Desis and Dragons happened. And I was like, oh, you will always find skills in your life that are transferable to the place where you want to be, right? Like, I think it's the intersection of what do I want to do, what can I do, and that sort of sweet spot over there is your easiest way of getting into like the industry. When I say easiest, I mean relatively, right? Still very difficult, but it's different from for example, from like, oh, I want to make games, but I need to be a developer. That's a whole new skill set you need to develop. And some people will do that. But if you're looking for ways to be like, I don't know where I fit in, look at what you can already do and start from there. That's what I did. And that has, worked out for me pretty well.
I think a lot of the advice that we get is, especially I think coming from India, or a lot of places where there isn't that much overlap when you're studying for something, then it's kind of difficult to think, oh, I studied biology, but I want to make games. And is that even a thing that's possible? I think a lot of people forget that it's your career is not, or what you studied is not everything, and you can do basically anything that brings you joy. Elise?
I joined this industry professionally on a bit of a bet, because I had been working with a couple of people during the pandemic. My industry, the film and television industry, had been shut down for about 7 months. And I had been trying to find different ways to keep my creativity alive, to not go, not lose the thread, as it were, stuck in a 750 square foot apartment in Queens. So I had been freelancing and doing a lot of, I don't have any money, I can't donate anything, I don't, but I've got time for the first time in my life in a way that I haven't in a long time. And I started making terrain and prop and costume pieces for people as a way to give back to the Black Lives Matter movement in my own community. And one of the people that I reached out to was Gabe Hicks. And we started working more and more together. And at some point, I think I said offhandedly, Gabe, you really should set up an LLC to protect yourself. You're working with really big companies, and your personal finances, or, when you just have somebody directly relate to you as an individual in terms of tax law, right? Like an LLC is a level of protection that you should have. And he said, you do it. I said, what? And he's like, you do it. Do it. I dare you. And I'm like, okay. And now we own a company together, which is kind of wild. But from that, I think my big piece of advice on this line of the spreadsheet question would be, don't be afraid to just give who you are, the purest expression of who you are, and how you show up in the space will be an expression of that. And people will want to interact with that because it's perfect representation of who you are. And don't be afraid to ask for opportunities, because sometimes people say yes. And then you have a job.
3-step process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Foolproof.
Works every time. Danny.
Hey, yeah. First, hey chat. This is a sweet shirt I got at WonderCon.
Yes.
Hey.
I'll get a little bit closer. I party up top, party on the bottom, business up top right now. But I can send you more pictures in the Discord later. But they're all kind of water Pokemon. But yeah, I got it at WonderCon in LA. But to the original question of how did I make the decision, I know we were kind of joking about it earlier, but being financially stable before I made a huge decision to up and leave something I've done for 10 years and I've built my roots there. Making sure a place, even regardless of where I was professionally there, I wanted to make sure that at least I had financial stability before I took the leap. And that was something that Roll20 was very upfront with. They had the salary listed into the application and all that. And that was a huge consideration. But another one too was when the Grand Panini of 2020 started, we were all home. So being able to, I've always considered myself an extrovert until I was like at home with my dog, and I'm like, this is a very good life for myself, and it feels okay, and without having to go into work and be on all the time, and being able to work from home, being able to work remote became a value to me. That was something that I was like, oh, this is something that I enjoy. But for the past 10, 12 years when I was working, going into like a corporate office, I never knew what I was missing. So when we were kind of forced into that situation, I was like, oh, I actually looking for a job, I do value not just financial stability, but the ability to work remote as well. So those were kind of the considerations that I took. And we'll talk a lot more about kind of like what I did to apply myself from that to getting the job. But yeah, I think just making sure, you cover your bases. Like sometimes you do have to take those leaps of faith, and I definitely did. But it just felt right. So I think once you kind of check off the standard, okay, these are green flags, these feels good. Sometimes you just have to say, yeah, I'm gonna change careers in my 30s. Why not?
What could possibly go wrong?
I don't know. But again,
all
we
the
do
cool
like
kids are doing.
all of these people I've been able to meet through the industry. So I don't know. It was still kind of like a safety net that I did have a community that would support me, even if I fell flat on my face and it didn't work out and I was elsewhere. It still felt like, we were still kind of all in it together.
That's beautiful, and also actually very similar to how I felt, because I came upon TTRPGs fairly late in life. I only discovered them as a thing in 2018. I didn't know what a TTRPG was until some friends introduced me to it, and I really enjoyed playing them. But then it wasn't, I think, until just before the pandemic that I started questioning whether it would be possible for me to create something in this space. And it's just, I think the combination of a lot of time that supposedly was free, but also that the times when we were on Zoom or Discord or Roll20 playing TTRPGs, whatever they were the times when I think I looked at least the happiest during the pandemic. And so I think a lot of my friends were like, never seen you this happy in your regular job. Why didn't you think about this? So I think it was a thing that I just hadn't considered before. So if you're watching this, you enjoy playing TTRPGs, and sometimes you've created things within play that you have thought, hey, that was really smart. Make a note and consider making more notes. Yeah, so just in the interest of time, I'm going to move us on to the next question. So having decided to go into this space, how did you all start looking for gigs? How did you either freelance ones or jobs, 9-to-5 jobs? What was your preference and how did you start looking for them? And we're going to start with Elise.
I was really lucky to have sort of jumped into the online Twitter community in a really big way. I made a bunch of stuff that sort of, again, I had time during the Panini to sort of build things that were representative of my work and my abilities, making props and costumes and whatnot. So a lot of it for me was just reaching out to creators and engaging with folks and saying, hey, you know, would you ever want to collaborate? And just not being, having a little bit of faith to reach out and say, do you want to do something together? And a lot of times the answer was not right now. And then for the couple of times that it was like, absolutely, that ended up, we ran with that for a long time. So, yeah, it was really, and I know that that's a little bit of a liminal time out of time moment for a lot of people, but I think that the principle can still stand to not be afraid to ask to be a part of something.
Exactly. I think most people are still like stepping out from their COVID bubble and blinking in the sun and just thinking, this doesn't look like the world I saw before.
No.
Indrani, how did you go about looking for things?
For me, when I started looking for work professionally, I had sort of built sort of a reputation in the industry for the work I did as a dice maker, which was a wholly like my own sort of venture, and I was doing it for myself. And I think having a network of people who knew me, trusted me, respected me has been like instrumental in making sure I feel like, oh, this is an industry I can invest my time and space in. Because it's difficult to take that leap of faith, right? It's difficult to be like, I have a more secure, comfortable job that I could be doing, but I'm taking a chance on something that is frankly a gamble, right? And for some of us, it will not work out, and that sucks, but that is the truth of it. But having made connections with people who were in the industry, who saw me and saw what I had to offer because of the work I had done. Like Elise said, just offer what you can to the space with the bandwidth that you have, and people will recognize that. And then it is 100% okay, I think, when you trust someone to be like, hey, how do I break it? Like, I've done the work. Now I would like some money for it. And I don't know where to begin with that. So talking to people really helped. They directed me to companies that were hiring for freelance writing projects. They directed me to people who were looking for marketing for their tabletop companies. My answer is different for video games because in video games, I don't have that full-fledged network that I do in tabletop. And there, it looks very different for me. There, That has recently started to change, but until very recently, I was, going the more traditional route of let me see what job openings there are, and let me see, where I can fit in. And both of these approaches are valid. One, I think, because it's built on the back of your credibility, is easier to go through, and the other is a little bit like cold emailing people and hoping that they will. It's not quite as effective, but a valid strategy nonetheless. Um, that's, I think, how I have found work is always through like doing the work, having people recommend me, and what's important to me is when somebody opens the door for me, I hold it open for the person behind me, right? That's key, because that's how you keep it going. um, if that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Indrani. I think something for everyone to note is that as long as you make sure that you know your boundaries and you're respectful of other people's boundaries. For instance, if people have said on their Twitter feed, don't DM me, I don't like it, don't DM them. But as long as you're respectful of these boundaries, then a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people are very responsive to just, even if they don't have time to give you, they will say, hi, I don't have time to give you, but here is a resource or a community that you might want to check out who might have more to give right now. And honestly, most people, especially in the TTRPG space, I feel are very open to sharing resources in terms of links and cool things to read and cool people to talk to, even if they don't have the mind space themselves. Danny.
Yeah, so I kind of have a different background of I came from the content creator side of things. So I was taking gigs here and there, creating videos and learn to plays and how to plays with board games. And through that, I got to kind of see both side of things of like, oh, these companies are coming to me asking me for my expertise. So going about and looking for gigs is you can go out and see what publishers, what creators are looking for things. So I think having that proactive step is important, is that you don't have to wait for opportunities to come to you. Like Indrani was saying, like you have a network. People are, once you kind of start building trust and building a good ley line of what's going on around you, not only can you support people, but other people can support you, which, surprise surprise, it's hard for us a lot of times, but people do support you and people do are looking out for you. We're opening up the door, we're keeping it open, like they were saying, but we're also like trying to kick it down so there's no doors there as well. So being able to not feel like like you can't just ask like, hey, is anybody looking for editing work, or does anybody need social media help? This is what I do. I can offer 2 hours a week, and even consulting is a huge thing that I never thought about too. So don't count yourself out of the game if you're new to things, or if you don't have the time to do a full-fledged 40-hour a week project. You can still go in here and there and do what you can, or at least provide what you can, on both ends. So people coming to you for projects and you going out looking for projects too.
Bianca.
Yeah, so I'm kind of echoing again what a lot of folks have said, and I kind of have two answers because for freelancing is different than full time. So for freelancing, where I'm writing and with narrative design, advice I do always want to share with folks is that while I think a lot of people might be nervous when they start out, and so you kind of do your own little project and you kind of work with yourself, but where I think you get the most value is looking for, and you'll see it all the time on social or on Discord, that people are looking for collaborative projects. So anytime you can join a team project, even if you feel like you might have imposter syndrome, you think that maybe you can't do it, just go for it, because you learn so much from working with other people. You do start making those connections, And like I said before, it is a small industry. The TTRPG space is a small industry, and so once you start to get to know folks, you're going to see them in the same projects come up. And you're like, hey, I just saw you, and I just worked with you. And so I think the more that you go for those collaborative projects, the more work you'll get, and people will start asking you. So it's kind of a balance, kind of like I think what Danny was saying too. Like there's some searching for it, and then when you start making connections, people will ask you. I will say that being full time, even though I was very lucky with the opportunity, part of the choice that part of what factored into that choice is I'm very risk adverse. Just in my life, I'm just not a risk taker, and having been in nonprofits for so long, it was a very deliberate decision for me that this move was the right move. And in a way, I kind of felt like I was interviewing Roll20 because I was asking a lot of questions about things that I was established in with, like, I wanted to make sure it was 40-hour weeks and not like 60 to 80-hour weeks, so I was looking for that their, work-life balance, about the benefits and things like that. And I even got to the point where part of the interview process at that time was like the final step was chatting with the CEO. And I did feel like I was interviewing him. And I was like, is it okay if I'm asking all the questions? And he's like, yeah, go for it. Ask me anything. And the one that really mattered to me was asking, where do you see Roll20 in 5 years? And he had the coolest ideas, and it was really clear that there was a vision for this company. And so that's where, for me, it was balancing that risk and saying, okay, it's the industry in general is always going to be risky. But as a company, I needed to feel like they were solid. So I really had to take inventory of what would make me feel comfortable taking that move. And having done that and asking, I was probably so irritating with how many questions, but be irritating, like if that's what you think it takes, like whatever makes you feel like it's a good decision, it's better to ask than not, and then show up on your first day and be like, this is not what I expected. So it's two very different, I think, ways of looking for that kind of work, but just be clear of what you're looking for.
Absolutely. I think as someone who sends Google Sheets of questions, I think I agree. Don't be afraid to cover your bases when you're looking for information. But also, I think a lot of people can think of a 9-to-5 as the only kind of job possible. And actually, I thought it was really interesting what you said, Bianca, because for me, I am also exceedingly risk averse. Maybe it's something about working in development. We should think about that. Right? Anyway, so, but being someone who is also risk averse, I find greater comfort in being able to do freelance things. So being able to pick when to start and when to stop working, being able to, especially since the pandemic, being able to pick projects when I know that I have developed new skills and can probably contribute in a different way to something else, I think is also really useful. So you people who are hopefully watching this still, definitely decide what mechanism of contributing works for you. It might look like, if you have enjoyed playing games, maybe you want to organize the team building exercise for your company. See what works, and like Indrani said, like, you can find communities, you can build communities, but a lot of the stuff that everybody is saying also speaks to doing something that you love. So when you're doing something that you love, your enthusiasm for the thing will come across. So don't worry too much about, I'm going to show up and say, I've not written anything, can I write for you? That's how a lot of people started. So don't worry about that. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff that we want to get through, but to give due deference to the people who are actually watching this, let's look at some of the questions from Twitch. So, okay. In an excellent suggestion that I'm going to take from honorable panelist is that maybe not everybody needs to answer all the questions because we'll never get through this, but just to know that a bunch of us will be on Discord after this. So if there are questions that you specifically have about things that you didn't get to ask or we didn't get to address in time for the panel's closing, please put them in Discord. Or if we happen to mention that we are cool with being cold emailed or DM'd, if we do, then please feel free to do that as well. Okay, so one question is that if you are not in the industry, if you have not built a community, if you don't have a presence in the industry at all, how do you identify and approach a good mentor? Because obviously there are lots of kind people, but not everyone has time all the time. Not everyone, there's a lot of ways to think about this. So if you have a burning response to this, please feel free to say so, Indrani. But if you're not Indrani and have burning response to this, tell me in that and I will throw it to you next. Indrani, go ahead.
As someone who has relied greatly on mentorship to like find my space, like my own like position in the space, this is a great question, because not everybody has pre-established networks or like people who they can turn to, and it can be daunting in these situations to reach out and ask for help. What I recommend doing is specifically looking for people, because these people exist, who are actively offering guidance and mentorship. Not necessarily like, oh, you seem like the person who is doing what I want to do. Will you help me? But more like, oh, this person is actively seeking out mentees or actively, offering career advice, or has put resources out there for people in your position, and then following up with them over email. There is a level of getting over social anxiety when it comes to this. Like, this is like that just comes with the territory of asking for help, because it's a deeply uncomfortable thing for anybody to do. But that is essentially what you're doing, is like, you have something that I would benefit from, and if you are willing, I would like to open a channel of conversation. And that is a perfectly normal thing to ask for, especially when that other person is soliciting it. So my recommendation is look for those specific people. Twitter, again, is a great resource for this if you're in tabletop. LinkedIn is a great resource for this if you're in video games. I Obviously, the normal rules of social contracts apply here, right? Don't be pushy, don't be, like, don't demand anybody's time, but asking respectfully is always okay. And most of the time, if people are like, hey, I'm completely booked out, but they will direct you to people who can help in most cases. What I really recommend, though, before you approach a mentor, is there is value in working on things by yourself. And whether or not it's good, that's not something we can unpack here. But the fact that you've done it is an indicator that you're willing to put in the work. And mentors who are looking for mentees are specifically looking for people who they can trust will, put in the work that needs to be put in to make it to wherever they want to. And that barrier of entry is lower if you know these people and they know your ethic and whatnot. But if you're cold emailing someone, or if you're like reaching out to a person you're not familiar with, having that sort of repository of work that you can pull out and be like, look, I've done all of these things and now I'm trying to take it a step further, that goes a long way in establishing trust. Because they're like, oh, even without networking resources, or community resources, or whatever the sort of barriers are, you still did all of these things. And obviously it's difficult to build that up, but having that goes a long way in finding a mentor who is willing to put their time and energy into you. I also really recommend programs like Big Bad Con's virtual office hours, right? There are people constantly making opportunities available to people. So make use of these, seek them out actively.
Thank you, Indrani. Those were some very actionable points. But I would also like to add that honestly, if you wait for yourself to learn how to deal with social anxiety in a completely new industry that you don't know anybody in. I mean, take all the time that you want, but frankly, you're not auditioning for, a movie, or you're not auditioning for TV. You don't need to be the most well-spoken, the most articulate, the most, the person with the best presence or best presentation. You just need to know what it is that you want to ask someone to do. And honestly, people appreciate also that when you demonstrate that you've put thought into something, right? So if you say, like, I am someone who wants to write for TTRPGs, can you help? Is a less helpful question than, I have enjoyed, playing XYZ systems, or this is the kind of genre I want to write for. Is it like, are there things that you would recommend reading or doing or checking out? Like, I mean, specific questions show thought and also show that you're valuing the person's time. Okay, so Danny, I know you had something to say about this. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but we live in a space. Well, I'll speak for myself. I live in a space where I'm chronically online, and we have resources all around us. So sometimes you can have maybe like a long distance relationship. You have a long distance mentor where you watch what they do. If they're putting things out online, like, you can follow them, you can be a fan of their work, and you can see their process or what they choose to put online. So I would encourage you to follow people that inspire you, and you can start seeing how they do things. Maybe they are going to be on a panel, maybe they're going to be speaking somewhere, and you can learn from these mentors without being an official mentee. And I think that will, especially if you don't have a foot into the industry yet, if you do choose to approach them, that might be a good tool to be like, to get over that social anxiety, to be like, yeah, I saw you on this panel, or I've been following your work, or I subscribe to your newsletter and I'm very inspired by. And then that can be kind of your in, rather than saying like, oh, hi, help me, I need help, and you're just flailing around. So that would be my advice, is that you can, like, I'm inspired by everybody on this panel, and you can watch long distance, you can support however you want to support, but you can learn a lot just by observing, and not just observing too, but like being involved and being excited for people and seeing them succeed, because a lot of times they do leave a trail of, like, it's not all, easy roads. So if you follow their socials, and you of course are respectful of how they put things online, you can learn a lot just by being a long distance mentee, until you do get that confidence, or get that spark to approach somebody.
Exactly. Thank you, Danny. Everyone has given such amazing answers. And I also just want to say that, mentorship means different things to different people. Even if you've said, hi, would you be willing to be a mentor? I saw somewhere on your socials that you said that this is something you do. For some people, that might mean they have a couple of hours for you once a month. For some people, that might mean they prefer emailing and reading stuff that you've written with a predetermined timeline of, these are how many drafts I'm willing to read. So, treat people how you would want to be treated. Make sure that you know that your time is valuable, but also so is theirs. The other thing that I wanted to add here is that also people have different ways of thinking about what is a lot of communication. There's a lot of cultural differences between how people want to be approached. There's a lot of cultural and just sort of many things go into whether a person is willing to be approached and how they're willing to be approached. So if you don't know if a person is willing to be approached, email is probably your safest option if that is something that they have mentioned on their website. If they haven't, then I would say try and contact them. But if they have not responded, then I would recommend not trying for a while at least. People have different things, different boundaries, but definitely I would say if there's anything you take away from this panel is that, especially when you're shifting careers in your 30s or whatever, like at some point after having worked a little bit, you tend to also take criticism very differently. So you're not a newbie in the world. You're an adult. You have work experience. You might you might think you want a lot of feedback. You might have a different way of actually getting feedback on something that you're suddenly new at. So definitely keep these things in mind as well. Before the stream suddenly cuts out in the middle of my wisdom, I would like everyone to just say when I call out their name, whether they are willing to have people email them or be DM'd or whatever. But if you are just happy for people to just respond to Twitter threads you currently have, that's also, which normally people do, then that's also completely cool. And I will start with myself. I am happy to be DM'd on Twitter. I will say what my Twitter handle is on Discord after this panel, and feel free to contact me there if you would like to. Elise.
I'd be happy to reach out. I'll put some email and Twitter in the Discord panel after this. Absolutely.
Amazing. Bianca.
Yeah, same. I probably prefer Twitter. I think I'm on there a little bit more. But please do reach out DM.
Danny?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yes!
No, seriously, no. I am, again, chronically online. I'm not the best at always responding immediately, especially through DMs, but I will get to you. And then feel free to tweet at me to say that you DM'd me, if that's too much.
That's true.
Just let me know.
I would never have the audacity to do that.
Danny, thank you for never leaving an opportunity alone on the table for long.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Indrani.
Yeah, I am completely okay with Twitter DMs, but email is best if you want a quicker response, because Purna will be able to attest that I'm very bad at responding to messages, so email is best. I will drop a link to all my links on the Twitch chat, so you can use whichever platform is comfortable for you.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. I think we are almost out of time. So what I'm going to do is just read out one of the questions that we got, and whoever wants to take it can gesticulate wildly, please. What is one thing that you were surprised to learn about yourself when transitioning into this industry?
I'll take that one real quick. I didn't think that I was as introverted as I am. I think, Danny, you mentioned that previously of being like, oh, I'm an extrovert. No, you're not. You're an extroverted introvert. And there's a difference about that. And meeting yourself wherever you are on that journey as you change a career path, especially something as big as a career path, be kind to yourself on that journey and be willing to meet yourself where you show up as things are changing.
Amazing. Anyone else have cool points to say about what they discovered about themselves?
I didn't know I was a maker. Like, I didn't realize I physically loved making things until I got into like the games industry. I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at it. So that was my like big discovery.
I think I never thought of myself as a person who could play many different roles in this. I always just thought, maybe, I guess I could write some fiction, I guess, maybe build some worlds, but I didn't realize how many roles there were to play and how many I was capable of playing. Danny, Bianca, any last thoughts?
I have a quick one. I would just say that, through this going into full time and making a change, again, being risk adverse, I would say that what I've learned is a lot of what I was asking myself was, what if it doesn't work? And at one point I realized I need to change the question, which is, what if it did work? And that's really how I've tried to look at things since I've come on board. But just with like making those kind of decisions, just think of it as again, don't let imposter syndrome or anything like that sneak up on you. Just flip the question and think of what if it is great, and take a chance.
I love that. And
That's
on that
amazing.
note,
Thank you everyone for watching us.
bye.
Bye.